be a little bit biased, but I think that's 3 excellent examples of the quality of the students and the quality of the data that's been able to be generated through projects like this. And before we transition over to the next speaker, I do want to make one point and one acknowledgement that being able to generate the data that we have for trials like this can only happen with large partners out in the industry opening the doors, allowing us to be able to go in and collect the data. And so Abigail's study would not have been able to be done if JBS hadn't allowed us on the board, in the doors. Michaela's the same way with Piglets, and I think it transitions really nicely also to the next presentation as well too, because Smithfield's been a long-time partner for us. If you were here at the original Livability conference, we also presented a trial that occurred in partnership with the Smithfield group. And so I'll invite Ashley to the podium right now. Probably goes without much of an introduction for everybody, but Ashley is currently the Senior Director of Research at Smithfield Foods. I think it's going to be a nice transition from what we saw originally to the data that she has to present for us right here. And so please give your attention to Ashley.
Thank you very much, Jason, as well as everyone else in the committee having me up here. And Michaela, you kind of stole all of my thunder, and that's pretty much what I'm going to talk about. But I did want to give an overview of life in the farrowing room and what are some strategies to improve piglet welfare. So you ended it perfectly. We're saying, hey, what are some opportunities to improve livability? We are going to talk about what doesn't. We'll get through that first. But just to remind everyone, there's a lot of tasks associated with day 1 pig care. And you start thinking about all those SOPs that people who are farrowing specialists have to fulfill every day and do it right. You got drying pigs, you're sleeving sows, you have data recording for all of those, oxytocin, you got to make sure the environment's right, you got to make sure the room temperature's right, iron injections, cross-fostering, split suckling, and those are really attention to detail. But what is something I have all in common is that timing of all of those day 1 tasks are critical because they're all associated with what? Colostrum, right? And just to remind everyone, the time period of colostrum is very critical. Me being a non-lactation biologist and naive to it, I was like, oh, maybe every sow has like 3 gallons of colostrum, and once it's gone, it's gone. Thank goodness Chantel Farmer updated me and said that's not the case. It all has to do with mammary cell gap junctions. And so there's a certain amount of time that those windows are open, allowing all of that IgG, IgA, those immunoglobulins to pass through. But those doors are slowly closing across a 24-hour period until they are finally closed. So, keeping of that, here's the time frame of when we have our peak colostrum. About the first 4 hours is when they are max colostrum that's coming through. After that, it's slowly going down. So if we were to line all of our tasks with when that were to occur, you'd say our optimal time to split suckle would be within that time period of, hey, she just farrowed and I've got 12 hours of max colostrum opportunities. That's the time I need to split suckle those litters. Also, the optimal time to encourage suckling and time to cross-foster pigs off has to be after all of that effects. So colostrum period's got to be almost done. You want to make sure that those piglets are getting the colostrum from the birth dam, and we wait until that's the end. So here's the proper order. So not only do they have all of those 20-some tasks they have to do it at the right time. Otherwise, it's kind of meaningless. So let's talk a little bit more about split suckling. So what is split suckling and why do we do it? We've already talked about that, but if I asked all of you, I'd probably get about 50 different answers because, oh, it's removing the largest pig, or it's taking the last born pigs, or it's for 45 minutes in the tote or 2 hours in the tote. Honestly, all the answers are right. So everyone's doing it multiple different ways, including in Smithfield, we've done it all different ways as well. So what do we know about split suckling? Why do we do it? We talked about in colostrum. The goal is to increase colostrum intake for smaller pigs or pigs born later in the litter to improve survival, right? It is not drying those pigs, it is not keeping them warm, it is about improving colostrum intake for those animals. And it's been a common practice for 15 plus years. Raise your hand, how many of you guys have been dedicated to split suckling in your systems and a firm believer in it? I'll raise my hand. I was a firm believer in split suckling. Most everyone. And then we did 2 trials not our objective to look at split suckling. It was a 2x2 factorial, but split suckling was a component to it in 2023, and it showed no benefit. In fact, when we looked at our parity 1 sows, it actually increased pre-wean mortality when we split suckled them, which was like, sorry, what? This is not at all what I expected. How can this be? Because it makes logical sense, right? I'm giving these piglets the biggest opportunity to get the colostrum to improve survival. So the scientist in me was like, all right, you know, we trust in God, but everyone else must bring data for me. Everyone else must bring controlled scientific results to me. So I went on a quest to understand the history of split suckling. And that made me do a full-on literature review. I wanted to know what was the science out there that shows an impact on survival. When I first started digging into it, there is tons of literature out there that shows split suckling improves piglet temperature, and then it also improves colostrum intake, immunoglobulins, and then there was an assumption that it improved survival. But very few studies actually looked at survival. In fact, only 12 published scientific articles from 1985 to 2023 on split suckling and its impact on average daily gain of the piglet or survival. So when I put them into categories, 2 showed a positive response, 2 showed a negative response, and 8 showed no impact at all. And so I'm just, my hands are up in the air again. I'm like, how in the world did this become an industry-wide practice when the science is kind of saying there's a lot of assumptions to it, but it makes logical sense again, right? In my mind, I'm like, this makes sense. Give those pigs the opportunity. So I realized I went on a quest and I had to talk to several people, and it led me, not on an airplane, but a phone call to Denmark, where I realized that's where a lot of the research came from. And it all happened when we heard about the highly prolific sow. Do you remember back in the late 2000s, we talked about, or early 2012 before, the highly prolific sow. She had a really high born alive, she had a really high total born, and that's what was being marketed as success in managing the hyper-prolific sow. She had a really high born alive, maybe not the highest functional teat count, but we needed to keep those piglets alive, and what is the best management strategies to do so? And they did have the research. So I said, okay, one final attempt at proving split suckling is valuable, because that was my opinion, that was my belief, and I'm gonna go on a mission to do this. So that was my objective. Determine if split suckling litters improves litter or piglet survival or average daily gain. And not only that, I want to know specifically which piglets are benefiting and who's not benefiting. So I'm going to dive deep into that data. So I had a control, litters that didn't get any split suckled, and then I used the 2 publications that showed a positive impact on pre-wean mortality and average daily gain, and I took their SOP and said, if they're the ones that showed a benefit, I'm going to replicate what they did. And this is my last chance hope here. So, does split suckling improve litter or pig average daily gain? No, it doesn't. Not litter or average pig weight either. Does split suckling improve piglet survival? Looking at number weaned per litter, looking at percent pigs died, I had no statistical difference whatsoever. Does split suckling impact small or large pigs? So this surprised me. Now, when we start looking at the individual pig populations, we had over 2,300 piglets per treatment represented in this data set. And as I start to put them into weight categories of looking at my distribution of the weights in all of these piglets, who is the smallest, the medium, and the largest, what surprised me is that there's no difference or improvement in my small pigs, but the shocker here is I'm hurting my largest pigs, because those are the pigs that I isolated in the tote. In fact, it doubled their pre-wean mortality. And I've been like, here, seriously? Because this is what I've believed in, it makes logical sense, but now we're saying there's detriment to actually this behavior that we're doing. Okay, so does split suckling help the later born pigs? Because that's what we thought, right? They don't have as much time to get that colostrum. In fact, no, when litters were split suckled, the later born piglets weighed about 0.4 pounds less than litters that were not split suckled. So again, potentially a detriment to those pigs. All right, our larger litters benefiting from split suckling. This is the chance where they've got more than 15 pigs on them. They don't have the functional teats. And as you see there, I have the exact same mean, no statistical difference whatsoever in looking at that interaction as well. So another big nope, didn't find any benefit there. All right, no stone left unturned. This is the last chance for success. Do our highest risk piglets benefit from split suckling? These are those pigs that are the last born. They're our smaller pig population, and they went into a larger litter, more than 15 piglets. They had less functional teats than that 15, and they had a full opportunity to suckle uninterrupted. These are the pigs that are going to benefit from split suckling. And did they? No, they did not again. So that was my last ditch effort to try to prove this. So at this point, there's 3 Smithfield trials that we had done where we saw no benefit in survival or growth of litters that were split suckled. In fact, we saw some potential detriment to our larger pigs when doing that. Now, if I put that with the 12 scientific publications that are already out there, that would say 87% of the trials, controlled sound scientific studies, showed that there's no impact or a negative impact from split suckling. How can this be? Because I'm a scientist, I trust the science, I trust the data, but logic has always said, I have been a cheerleader for split suckling. I've been the one on the farm saying, hey, it makes sense, let's do it. So I've been defeated by science. Thank you, science, you win. But I'm a true believer now. And thank goodness to my Smithfield Research Committee, as I'm sharing all of this information and they can see how defeated I was, we started talking about why. Why do we think we're not seeing a benefit from split suckling when 15 years ago we did? And so thank goodness they brought to my attention, think back to why did we start split suckling? It's to increase colostrum in our smaller pigs or our pigs born later. So what happened between 2008, 2010? We started genetically selecting for a higher total born, but we didn't start selecting for birth weight. So during that same time, when the highly prolific sow came about, we were saying we need to find management strategies to support those pigs. And so at the time when that happened, it made logical sense and it probably worked. But today, you can see our birth weight is significantly higher. We have a birth weight of around 3.5 pounds, and she can raise them. Today's sow is different. She is having more functional teats, she's having higher born alive, but she's having bigger piglets that she can raise and doesn't need that extra support. Not to mention, we've had advancements in nutrition and different management techniques, all the things. So Jason, it goes back to what you said yesterday, is dogma. Challenge the dogma and the common beliefs that we've had, and this is what did it for me. I was like, man, now do I have to start challenging everything that I know? Because that was one that I truly believed in. So when we start thinking about our time that we've spent over the past 15 years split suckling, does this kind of make us feel exactly what we've been doing for 15 years? And I really hope not, because we want to say at one point, she did need that extra support, right? She needed the help, and we were giving it to her. But today, she's fine. She can do this on her own. But then it leads me down a task of saying, questioning the dogma that Jason told us to do. Okay, so now what other tasks in farrowing am I wasting my time on? Because those people have a lot of things that they need to be doing, and I want to make sure what they're doing is having the biggest impact on pig livability, welfare, and average daily gain of those pigs. So I know what you're going to say, oh, please don't take this turn down to negative town, because I don't want to be the pessimist to say, oh, everything we've been doing doesn't work. But I'm going to tell you some of the things we've been doing doesn't work. But there is some hope at the end. Drying newborn pigs. How many of you, again, makes logical sense that we see those wet, cold piglets come out, we want to pick them up and we want to dry them off, right? Raise of hand. How many of you really, we firmly believe in, and I'm with you, I'm raising my hand proudly, I wanted to dry newborn pigs. I'm walking through farrowing, I see a pig come out, it's my mission, I want to pick that pig up. But we had questions, and our simple questions were, which drying agent is better? Do we use the Rolls Royce of a drying agent or the cheaper one? Or do we use towel drying versus no towel versus a drying agent? And as a scientist, I have to have a control, right? I have to have a control where I don't dry piglets. And so what do you think those results said? Does drying pigs increase survival in a warm, dry crate? Warm, dry crate being the main thing here? No, it didn't. Do low birth weight pigs benefit from it when they're in a warm, dry crate? No, they didn't either. Okay, is there any drying agent better than another one? Nope, they were all the same, as we compared, I think, 3 different drying agents. The big question also was towel drying. When you pick up that pig, you get a better chance to really get the movement on that pig and get it up. We thought that that would have a better impact on livability. It had no difference than a drying agent versus the control. However, what we did learn is that when you put temperature sensors throughout your farrowing room, where's your temperature sensor for your main controller? It's in the center of the room, right? There's about a 7-degree difference between your outside crate and your center crate. So those crates that were in our outside corners that were drafty, those pigs are the ones that benefited from being dried. The pigs in the center of the room that were in a warm, dry environment, it didn't matter if you dried them or not. They were already in a warm, dry, clean environment. The pigs that were on the outer area where your temperature sensors are not, and it's 7 degrees, potentially chillier, a little bit draftier, those are the pigs that benefited and had a higher survival rate when they were dried. So I would say to this one is, the opportunity is, do we go and dry all the pigs, or do we go fix our environments that are suboptimal? Fix your drafts, fix your cold spots, and then you don't have to dry the pigs. So it goes back to some of the basic care: feed, water, shelter, get your environment right, and you don't have to do these additional things. Another question we had is, what also happens when you're walking around farrowing and you see a litter that's scouring? They're wet, you want to dry them, right? You want to throw some drying agent on them and you want to help them out to look better. And so we had that same question. And the first trial we saw was that when we applied drying agent to our scouring litters, we actually had a lower number of pigs weaned. And we were, again, scratching our head. I'm sorry, what? They look better, right? They're looking better. Let's do this again. I'm not going to believe just one trial. Do it again. We did it again, and we saw no statistical difference. Again, but this time we wanted to measure, okay, what's happening here? Are we disrupting? What do we do when we're walking the farrowing room and we're putting drying agent on those pigs? We're throwing it on there, we're disrupting the sow. She's getting up, the piglets are now getting up, and so we recorded the amount of times that a sow or a litter was disrupted by our activities of throwing the drying agent on there. And I can't directly correlate those two together, but there was a higher amount of disruption in the litters that were, in fact, put drying agent on. So I know at this point what you're thinking. All right, Ashley, you've just told me that everything we've been doing for the last 15 years is not working. I promise you I'm not a Debbie Downer. I do want to get to some things that have shown some positive impact. So we had the same question about actively farrowing sows, because that's a lot of effort. They're tending to actively farrowing sows. So is someone there when she's farrowing? Does she need to be sleeved if she's showing signs of distress? Are we making sure our room is set up properly? Environment's critical. Sleeving sows, basic sow care, feed, water, getting piglets to the udder, getting piglets to a heat source. And the answer is yes. We saw a significant increase in both our Utah and Oklahoma operation by increasing our number born alive just by having someone actively there when farrowing by about 0.4. So the question was, okay, am I supposed to add another employee and change my employee to sow ratio just to get that 0.4? The answer was no. The ROI does not justify adding an additional employee or changing that ratio. However, when we looked around 4,300 sows, the time that they started farrowing and ended farrowing, we're able to identify when those active farrowing hours are. It ends up being about, if you have a shift from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. and you can move that couple hours both ways, you're going to get about 75% of your active farrowing hours. So it's utilizing the team that you have, but staggering out their shifts a little bit more so that we can be there and schedule that. And that'll help us get an extra 0.66 PMSY just by scheduling out our shifts appropriately during your active farrowing hours. Now, we looked at this time period across North Carolina, Utah, different locations. They're all pretty similar, maybe an hour shift a different way based on what coast you're on, but pretty similar of the active farrowing hours of when those girls are going. We talked about colostrum. We know colostrum is supposed to equal survival. We've talked about this curve. I told you before it's available for 0 to 24 hours post-farrowing. But what we said is that it comes all from not 3 gallons of milk or colostrum, it's that those doors are open, right? So the moment she has those piglets, those mammary cells are wide open, allowing IgG from the blood to get into the milk and transfer. That's what creates colostrum. But those doors are slowly closing. And so what the theory here is, and I give all the credit to Dr. Chantel Farmer, she published a paper a couple years ago about administering a high dose of oxytocin. And what that does is it's almost like that guy in the elevator. He's holding the doors open. That high dose of oxytocin postpartum is going to hold those doors open, allowing for colostrum to pass through for a longer period of time. So what it's doing is potentially creating that blue line there that gives us a longer opportunity for oxytocin to occur. So again, thank goodness we have lactation biologists and experts in all of these areas, because I am not them. I can just simply take her research, her data, work with her, and say, how can I extrapolate that information into real-world applied research? And from that, what we've learned is that we've done 6 trials on this concept, and that administering 4 mils of oxytocin IM in the neck of any sow between 4 to 12 hours postpartum, and again, more pigs than teats, because again, we just learned about how important functional teat count is, and you'll get a 1 to 4% improvement in piglet survival. Now again, I will repeat this, timing is critical. Do not administer it less than 4 hours, because she's already at her max colostrum. She can't get any better at that point. She starts to decline on her colostrum around 4 hours, so timing is critical. If you can't get it in that 4 to 12 hours, do not waste your time. So the main messages here, if I have to think of anything, is challenging our dogma. I've fully challenged a lot of the things that we think have been just routine things that we should be doing. And it takes me back to the basics. Focus on what I'm going to call primary care. You think whether it's for humans or it's for animals, what do we all need? Feed, water, shelter. Feed, water, shelter. If we were to focus our efforts on primary care, sow feed, what does she need? Sow care condition, clean feeders, water availability, flow rates, and then a big one that is probably going to take a lot of time out of that is the environment. Keep your farrowing crates dry, warm. Fix your drafts. Make sure your farrowing room temperature curves are accurate for the environment that you have, whether it's a dry climate or a humid environment. Make sure your heat sources are working. Focus on those areas, and I'm going to call them primary care areas, and this is something that every animal needs. Every human needs, every animal needs is primary care. Feed, water, shelter. Anything beyond that, once you've accomplished primary care, is advanced care. This is not every sow that needs this. These are specific animals that need additional help for specific purposes. And so that's potentially treating your sows or pigs for what other ailment they may have. That may be drying your newborn pigs. If you have a suboptimal, you have a corner that I just can't get this draft fixed. I know it's colder in here and I can't get it fixed. Dry those pigs. I'm not saying don't go dry all your pigs. I'm saying dry the pigs that need to be dried. Sleeving sows in distress, assisting piglets to get to a heat source or to suckle, cross-fostering, postpartum oxytocin. Again, the postpartum oxytocin I talked about is an advanced care option. Not every sow needs that. If she fits the window and she has more pigs than she does teats, there's an opportunity for her. But not every sow needs to receive that. So that's my basic message, is focus on our primary care. Feed, water, shelter, and anything beyond that's advanced care. That's individual animal needs and what they may need. Thank you very much for your time.